2422. We're taking a pulse of the various industries 9 months into the pandemic and just right at the start of the festive season here at the moment. So let's go to Phyllis for just a moment as we finish my conversation with you. Patricia had given some interesting views on where SMEs need to go. For you, what next with manufacturing? I mean, I think we've learned quite a bit that a number of those things that we're importing from China and other jurisdictions are things that we can make here. Some hard lessons we learned when the supply chains were disrupted, and now we're starting to get into more manufacturing. Where do we go from here, Phyllis, for you? What more does the government need to do? How else do we make sure that a lot of what we're doing with manufacturing now happens locally and of the right standard, and that it's made competitive enough?
Thanks, Yvonne, for that. I think going forward, as you have said, we have seen a lot of opportunities for local content in the country. So it's to say that how do we nurture these industries? How do we support them to grow? How do we see more Buy Kenya, Build Kenya from the government of Kenya, implementation in the different projects and procurements that they're carrying out. But more than anything, just to re-emphasize the need to provide that stable and predictable business environment and to ensure that we bring down the cost of doing business. Just to re-emphasize on the issue of minimum tax and other taxation policies, to ensure that we have taxation policies that support the recovery. So some of those positive ones we've both pointed out as CAM and KEPSA, to take those into the future, but also hold and stall any proposals that would affect business if they're implemented now. And for minimum tax, our main concern with it is the fact that we are already paying a lot of taxes, whether it's at national or county level, and that any further taxation to business, especially at a time like this and for the low margin businesses, would have a long-term impact on the recovery of this business. The other important thing is for government to relook at also creating fiscal space by reducing government expenditure, because taxation and all these measures are really to fund government expenditure. So there's need for us to also relook at those as we go into the recovery. So the
Phyllis,
sector is looking forward to growth and really urging government to support and reduce the negative impacts that already are being felt by business. Thank you.
All right. Phyllis, just before I let you go, so it's sort of a two-in-one, a number of the measures always, some would say, seem targeted at the sort of bigger industries, but there's many cottage industries. There's many people who are making honey in their kitchens, who are baking cakes, who are doing a lot of that. And maybe sometimes they feel left out and recognized. What happens to them? What sort of support do they require? And with the onset of a second wave in the country, and according to that KEPSA report, with 43% of the businesses saying they expect full recovery in 2021, we're hearing from the government, I believe CS, Dr. Mwangangi said, we're going to see COVID with us for a while, possibly, like this until this time next year. So that's another year. So how optimistic can we be seeing that happening? And then, what happens to the cottage industries? Many people selling things they're making in their homes, online, on Facebook, on Instagram. What about them? In some cases, they feel like manufacturing is for the big boys only.
For the SMEs, at CAM we have an SME hub for manufacturers, and we've really been getting their pulse and seeing how we can support them. The biggest challenge, as Patricia mentioned, is really finances. So trying to see how they can get some money into their business to really unlock the cash flow and enable them to move is critical. The other one is technical expertise and support. Even as they relook at moving forward, how do we support them from a technical business growth training perspective? And we've been doing a lot of capacity building, but government in terms of the scale, because as you said, there are a lot of cottage industries, micro industries. So it's really working closely with government for key bodies like the Kenya Industrial Estates, KIRDI, KEBS, and all their key institutions to really find programs that suit the SME sector. I know that the Ministry of Industry and IFC launched a Kenya Industrial Program for SMEs, where they'll be looking to support about 250 SMEs. And there are different programs in terms of financing, but the other critical one is the credit guarantee scheme. Having that in place and figuring out how that money trickles down to the MSMEs especially is going to be critical. And lastly, the key linkages and partnerships with big business, because I think those will really help to stimulate and catalyze SMEs and cottage industries into the future. Then the last one for me is for a lot of the cottage industry, some of the measures say by KEBS, which require them to have certain physical premises and a lot of detail, can be relooked at in light of what is currently happening.
Yeah.
Because there's the possibility, say, for shared centers where we have manufacturing hubs and a different way of approaching. In the US, for example, for cottage industries manufacturing, as long as you're manufacturing to a certain scale, they have measures that make it more friendly for some of them. So those are some of the things we can do going into the future.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Phyllis. Can we try Jimmy Kariuki one more time? The chair of the KTB. I guess because of time, you have like about 2 minutes. So talk to us about what's happening, jobs resuming, we're into the festive season, what your outlook is for that.
Sorry, Yvonne, the connection was bad. I didn't hear the question. Do you mind repeating it?
So talking about going into the festive season now, which would typically otherwise be your busy season, could you talk to us about the jobs that have been recovered so far and what you foresee for this month and December and recovery going forward? Okay. Yeah, all right. Patricia, 1 minute to give your final remarks.
Thank you, Yvonne. I think my final remarks are to say that, you know, as Kenyans, we do remain very resilient. But in our resilience, I guess we also need the stimulus and the things to support our resilience. We are really looking forward from a micro and a small enterprise point of view towards the financial instruments and the support that comes through the credit guarantee scheme, the other initiatives such as the MasterCard Foundation and KEPSA Foundation. These are the sort of things that are going to help the small businesses in the area that hurts the most, which is liquidity and getting funding. Without cash, you cannot do business. That is a reality, irrespective of what skills you have. So one of the things that we are really looking forward to, and we will continue to push, is to make sure initiatives such as those and things like the credit guarantee schemes, which are more holistic and touch a lot more people, can actually come into place to really ensure that our micro and small medium enterprises in this country continue to thrive and can indeed recover from this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. Now, liquidity, liquidity, liquidity to keep businesses going. In other words, money, money, money. Thank you for that. Indeed, we remain optimistic. And are the traders optimistic out on the ground? As I say, vitu kwa ground are different. Let's get to our Patrick Igunza. He's at the Central Business District here in Nairobi, speaking to various traders.